Okay, taking a look at number 1, we can see that it's a quadratic formula. So I know that right here there is a root, and I know right here there is also a root. So if I set it up like this, I know that I have 2 binomials. This number right here is -3, and this number right here is +1. So I know that in my binomials, I can put an x here and an x here. So this number has to be the opposite of -3. I know x plus 3 is going to give me 0 for this binomial. And if this is +1, this one's going to be -1. Now, if I FOIL this, perhaps I would get this quadratic formula. So let's FOIL it. X squared. This one would be -1x. Right here would be +3x. And this one would be -3x. If I simplify this, this is x squared. -1 plus 3 is +2x. And then -3 comes down. This is what I would have as my quadratic. But I know this cannot be this, because right here, I see that the y-intercept is 6. Sorry, get rid of this b. The y-intercept is 6. Now the y-intercept right here is -3, and we know that these two are not the same. So what number can I multiply this entire thing by so the y-intercept is equal to this? Well, -3 times -2 is +6. So if I distribute this throughout my equation, I'll have -2x squared minus 4x plus 6. And this will be my equation for the quadratic formula. Okay, this is an inequality, but it's the exact same thing as finding a line. I know that a line is in the form y equals mx plus b. So all I really need to know is what m equals and what b equals. B is the y-intercept, and I see that right here. It is -1. And then to find m, I'm just looking for rise over run. So all I need is 2 points. I have one here. Let's make a couple more points. And all I need to figure out is what the slope is. So it goes down 1 and over 3, -1, 3. So if it's rise over run, my slope is -1 over 3. So my equation is now y equals -1/3 x minus 1. But since it's an inequality, I need to change this equal sign. So I have y, -1 over 3x, and -1. Now, the shaded region are my possible solutions, so I know it is above the line, so this is greater than. And then because this is a dotted line, I know that my solutions cannot be on this line, so it is not greater than or equal to, it is just greater than. Vertex form is super easy. I know that the vertex formula is x equals -b over 2a. You have to remember this. So this is A right here, our A is 1, our B is 14, our C is 48. When I do this, I plug it in. X equals -b, so that's -14 over 2 times A. A is 1, so -14 divided by 2, so my x value is -7. Now I'm not done yet because I want to find it in ordered pair. So all I do is plug this back into the formula. And this will be y equals -7 squared plus 14 times -7 plus 48. And if you do this on your calculator, y should equal -1. So I have this and I have this. Your final answer should be -7 for x and -1 for y. Okay, for midpoint, it's easy to imagine where these would be. So if I want to do my one endpoint, let's say this is 5, let's say this is 2, it would be somewhere right here. And then our midpoint, let's say it was -10 and then -2, it'd be somewhere over here. My endpoint, my midpoint, and I know my other endpoint would be somewhere all the way down here. The question is, what is it? Okay, so the easiest thing to do is to take the midpoint and multiply it by 2, because it's halfway. To undo that, you're going to multiply it by 2. So if I have my midpoint, -10 times 2, that is -20. -2 times 2 is -4. Now, I want to figure out my x value here 5 plus what other x value will give me this? And then my y value is 2 plus what other y value will give me negative 4? And that'll give me my other end point. Okay, so 5 plus something equals negative 20. Well, I can set that up. I subtract 5 from both sides, and this will end up being my x2 value equals negative 20 minus 5, which is negative 25. Okay, so my 1 value is negative 25. Now I can do the same thing for this. I'll just do it right here. So to get y by itself, I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. These cancel, and I have y2 equals negative 4 minus negative 2, which is negative 6. So my other endpoint is negative 25, comma, negative 6 as your final answer. Okay, whenever I'm dealing with people, I like to make a table. Right here, I would have Takira, and right here, I would have Kimberly. Now you just have to read this. They have a combined age of 47. So if it's a combined age, I know that I'm adding them together. And if it's a combined age of 47, I know that's gonna add up to equal 47. So Takira is 3 years older than Kimberly. I'm gonna put K plus 3, or you could put X if you wanted to, which makes Kimberly K or X. When I combine these, this becomes 2K plus 3 equals 47, and then it's really simple from here. Just solve for K. These cancel. I have 2K equals 47 minus 3 is 44, divided by 2. So K equals 22. So Kimberly is 22, which answers the question, how old is Kimberly? But if I wanted to, I could go back and do Takira. 22 plus 3, Takira is 25. But 22 is the answer. For this one, which type of function is represented? You have 3 choices in Math 1. One is going to be linear, one is going to be exponential, and another one's going to be quadratic. Okay, so it's really easy just based on the shapes. Linear is going to look like this, a straight line. Exponential is going to look like this, an exponential increase or an exponential decrease. And then quadratic we know is a parabola that's going to go like this, N shape, or like this, a U shape. So a dolphin leaps from an ocean. So you know the dolphin kind of leaps like this out of the ocean. What shape is that? A parabola. This one's going to be a quadratic. An ant farm increases by 8% weekly. So we know this is a percent. It's not going to increase by a constant rate. It's 8% of each previous term. So it's going to increase like this. That is exponential. An ant farm adds 4 ants each month. So this is the key word here, adds and each. That's going to be constant. It's going to look linear just like that. Tiara's hair grows 8 centimeters per year. Again, that's a constant increase. We know that linear is going to be constant. So this is also linear. And then next we have decreases at 4%. 4% is the giveaway. You know it's going to be not exactly constant in a linear way, but in exponential. So the last one is exponential. Okay, for this one, the height of a river is modeled by the function negative 3d plus 150. So when you're talking about what everything represents, let's start with the y-intercept. Y-intercept is where it begins. So it's on this axis. It starts at 150. So what does that mean? 150 is where the river starts. So it's at the starting point. So I'd say river starts at 150 feet. So it's decreasing, so you know the river is going down in height. So what is the meaning of the slope? Well, it's going down -3 feet, and there's always a per with slope. Per what? It's per time per day. And how many days would it take for the river to dry up? Well, when the river dries up, it's at a height of 0 feet. So all I do is set this function equal to 0. So it'd be 0 equals negative, that's important, 3d plus 150. All I have to do now is solve for d, which is the number of days. When I do that, These cancel. I have negative 150 equals negative 3d. My final step is divide both sides by negative 3. So that gives me number of days equals negative 150 divided by negative 3, which is 50. And then our unit is days. Oh my God. Okay, so this is going to be a linear model because she's traveling at a constant pace. So if you want to set up your XY table, that's the smartest thing to do. At 2:30 p.m., she is 480 miles from Pittsburgh. And then at 3 p.m., she is 450 miles from Pittsburgh. So let's figure out how much did she travel in half an hour. So right here is 30 minutes. I'm going to write that as 0.5 of an hour. And then over here, she travels negative 30 miles. So she's getting 30 miles closer every half an hour. So if I think about that, if she is traveling 30 miles every half an hour, how much is she traveling every 1 hour? Well, since this is double, we're gonna have to double this too. She travels 60 miles in 1 hour. So at a rate at 60 miles per hour, which we got from here, at what pace will she get to Pittsburgh? Well, she is 480 miles from Pittsburgh. So if she's traveling at a speed of 60 miles per hour, all I need to do is take 480 miles and divide it by 60 miles, because that's how much she travels per hour. 480 divided by 8 is 8 hours. And then we want to know, let's see, what time. So what time? So 8 hours from her starting point, which is 2:30, plus 8 hours is going to be 10:30 p.m. Okay, this one's super easy. It gives us a linear function where m is months, and they just want to know how much the cost is going to be after 2 years. Well, since months and years are not in the same unit, you need to convert it to what it wants. 2 years is going to be equal to 24 months. So instead of plugging 2 in, I'm going to plug in 24. So this becomes c of 24, because m is going to be 24. And all I do is plug it in. 8 times 24 plus 12. And when I do 8 times 24, that's 192 plus 12. So C of 24 will give me my final answer of $204. Okay, so they give us an equation, and they're giving us in terms of T, which is the total cost. But now it wants us to write a formula that can be used to determine the number of printers purchased. So that variable is P. So take exactly what they give us, and instead of putting T equals, you're going to write it as P equals. So how do I rearrange this so that it's in terms of P? Let's start with the original equation. T equals 200S plus 150P. Draw my river. To get P alone, I'm going to subtract 200S on both sides. These cancel, leaving T minus 200S, and this equals 150P, which I drop down. P is not by itself yet. My final step is to divide by 150. These cancel out, so I'm left with P, and that's equaling everything on this side. So P equals T minus 200S over 150. That's going to be your final answer. Your first step to finding a zero, also known as a root, also known as a solution, also known as the x-intercept, is to see if there is a GCF. So I have 4, 4, and negative 48. My GCF is going to be 4, which goes into all of those numbers. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to factor it out. So 4 comes on the outside. What equals that when I factor out the 4? Well, 4 times x squared will give me 4x squared. 4 times positive x will give me plus 4x. And 4 times negative 6 will give me negative 48x. Now to find these, this all happens when there is a 0. So I'm going to factor this into 2 binomials. The 4 stays. You can't just get rid of it. And these I had to factor out into binomials. Since the a number here is 1, I just know it's as simple as putting an x in each binomial. Now I need to figure out what multiplies to equal negative 6, and then, I'm sorry, this one should be negative 12. What multiplies to equal negative 12, but adds to equal positive 1? So my factors of negative 12, I have 6 and 2, 3 and 4, 12 and 1. I know it's going to be this because the difference is 1. So if I have negative 12, and I know it's 3 and 4, one has to be positive, one has to be negative. So how are these numbers going to add to equal positive 1? Well, I know it's going to be positive 4 and negative 3. So this becomes my quadratic factored binomials of this function. Now to get the zeros, this is saying that all of this has to equal 0. Now I can make this equal 0 by making this equal 0 or this equal 0. So what number is going to make this binomial 0? X plus 4 equals 0. Well, to get x by itself, I can subtract 4, these cancel, and x equals negative 4. That's my one solution. Now for this side, I have to make this also equal to 0. X minus 3 equals 0. I can add 3 to both sides, which cancels these. X equals positive 3. My final step is to go back and read the question, which is the positive 0. So I have two options here. They are both solutions, but only one of them is positive. Your answer is going to be x equals positive 3. Okay, so we're comparing two schools, Northridge and MLK. So when I'm comparing things like this, I always like to make a table. I have MLK and I have Northridge. All right, so let's begin with Northridge. Northridge adds 100 students each year. Now this is the giveaway. What kind of function is that going to be? Each year, so that's constant. So we know that's going to be linear, which is also y equals mx plus b. So for Northridge, I start with 900, so that's going to be my starting point. And then I add 100 students each year. That's going to be 100, and since it's each year, I put a variable of x next to it. For MLK, though, this is a giveaway. That is not going to be any of this, just like each was linear. Percentage is going to be instead exponential. So we know that's going to be y equals a, b to the power of x. So what is my principal? I start with 500. That's going to be my a value. I increase at 50%. Now, increase is important. So I know I'm going to begin with 1.5. And then each year I have my variable x, and I'm setting them equal to each other because I want to know in what year will MLK have more students in Northridge. So the easiest thing for you to do, since this is technically calculator inactive, is make an XY table for both of them. So this is going to be year 0. At year 0, MLK has 500 students. At year 0, Northridge has 900 students. Now to figure out what the next years are, let's just do small numbers at a time. Year 1. So I'd plug this as my x value here. 500 times 1.5 to the power of 1. Well, that's going to be 750. And then for this, I plug this into my x value here. 500 times 1.5 to the power of 2. That's going to be 1125. For this, I'm also going to do years 1 and year 2. So if I do this here, 900 plus 100 times 1, that's going to be 1,000. And then 900 plus 100 times 2, that's going to be 1,100. So let's stop and figure out if I've already answered the question. So year 0, Northridge has more. Year 1, Northridge still has more. And then year 2, it's 1,100 versus 1,125. You can see that by year 2, MLK will have more students. So it'll be year 2, MLK will have more students. And if it is currently 2019, then year 2, so 2 plus 2019, the year will be 2021. Okay, solve a systems of equations. So we know a system of equation, a solution to it would be where they intersect. So we know at the point of intersection, they are equivalent. So you have two methods. You could use elimination, or you could use substitution. In this case, substitution is the easier one because I have a y by itself. So right here, this y, I could substitute for this y. So this y is going to come out, and in its place, I can put this value. So I'm going to rewrite this starting from here. 5x minus 4. And instead of this y, which I took out, I'm going to substitute this value. So negative 3x plus 5, and parentheses, and then I drop down the equal sign and the negative 3. From here, it's as simple as solving an equation. I'm going to do this first, distribute the negative 4. This becomes positive 12x. This becomes negative 20. I drop down the negative 3. I drop down the 5x. These two are like terms. It becomes 17x minus 20 equals negative 3. Trying to get x by itself, I add 20 to both sides. These cancel. I drop down 17x. Negative 3 plus 20 is positive 17. Divided by 17 on both sides. My x value, 17 divided by 17, is 1. But I'm not done because it's asking for x comma y. So all I do is pick the easier equation. And that's going to be this one for me. And I plug in my x value. So if the equation is y equals negative 3x plus 5, I'm going to substitute 1 in. Y equals negative 3 times 1 plus 5. My y value is negative 3 plus 5. My y value is going to be negative 3 plus 5, which is 2. My final answer in terms of xy should be parentheses 1, comma 2 as your final answer. Okay, so whereas in this problem we did substitution, this problem is actually going to be easier with elimination as our method. We know that because the x's line up, the y's line up, and the constants line up. So I want to figure out how to eliminate. That is the key. So let's just go with the x. What can I multiply this by? So this is a negative 1 to cancel with negative 3. Well, I know if I multiply by negative 3, then this will be positive, and a negative 3 and a positive 3 will cancel out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just distribute this negative 3 to all of the terms. So negative 3 times negative 1x is going to be positive 3x. Negative 3 times y is going to be negative 3y. And then negative 3 times positive 3 is going to be negative 9. I'm going to drop down this equation right here. So this is negative 3x, positive 3y, and 4. And now I can just go through and add them up. So negative 3 plus positive 3, so 3x minus 3x, they cancel. And this is unique too because negative 3y and positive 3y will also cancel. So what is left on this side? If these cancel and these cancel, the number is actually just 0. On this side, I have negative 4 and I'm adding, I have negative 9 and I'm adding 4. That's going to be negative 9 plus 4 is negative 5. You can already see that this is a little funny. When I have a number that doesn't equal the number next to it, this is going to be no solution. If you want to go the further step, you can just figure out what it would look like. So a system that has no solution would never touch, so they would be parallel. Okay, so direction 1, Xavier leaves school to go home. He walks 6 blocks north. So north is this way up, and that's 6 blocks. After that, he walks 8 blocks west. West is this way, and that is 8. How far is Xavier from the school? So he leaves school, that's school, this is home. You want to figure out how far he is. This is as simple as Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. This is A because it's a leg. This is B because it's a leg. You're solving for C, which is the hypotenuse. So we'll do 6 squared plus 8 squared equals C squared. I'll just do this in my head. 6 squared is 36. 8 squared is 64. That is C squared. 36 plus 64 is 100, which equals C squared. C is not by itself yet. To undo the square, you're going to take the square root. These cancel. I'm left with C. And then the square root of 100 is 10. So how far is he from school? He is 10 blocks. I'm dealing with a rectangle. I always like to draw my picture. The length is 3 times the width, so I'm just going to put 3w. The perimeter is 48, so I know if this is the length, this is the width, and then on the opposite sides, they are congruent. If the perimeter is 48, perimeter means I'm adding them up. 3w plus 3w plus w plus w equals 48. So all I have to do is combine like terms. 3, 3, 1, and 1, that's going to equal 8. W equals 48. I divide by 8 on both sides, leaving my width as 6. So what is the width? I answered that. If I wanted to go back, I could plug it back in here. 3 times 6, so my length would be 18, but it's asking for width, so that would be your answer.